everybody. Hello, how are you? My name is Karl Sandoval, and I just wanted to say welcome to my YouTube channel. I've got a interesting story for you today. It's about the late, great Eddie Van Halen. So sit down, relax, drink a cup of joe, have a beer, have a Coke, whatever suits your fancy, and let's get on with this story. It's actually, it's kind of crazy unique in a sense that it's something that I didn't think I would have ever seen. And it was around the, I would say, mid-70s, maybe towards the latter 70s. I'm not quite sure the year. Could have been 1978, 77, 78. But what had happened was I was in a band called Smokehouse. And this was a local San Gabriel Valley jam band that in my recollection, I believed we were sort of like a Leonard Skinnerd point blank type band, and which, you know, by all means they're outstanding bands. So we were not quite outstanding, although we probably thought we were at the time, but we were on our way. And I honestly believe to this day, if we would have stuck it out, I think there would have been a good chance that we would have made some noise in the music industry. But anyway, that's really not the story. The story is during my time in being in this band, we used to do a lot of gigs locally, and one of them was at the Pasadena Civic. And it was a fascinating time because here you are, just a local musician, you know. I happen to be a guitar player, and I play lead guitar in the band, and you know, struggling, just trying to figure out what guitar was all about, and just trying to work my way up. But in this band, we used to play second, third, opening act to a lot of the other more popular bands in the area, and one of which was Van Halen. Let me tell you, I've got some stories about when I initially even heard of the band, and then when I first saw them, it was jaw-dropping. Trust me, it was just awesome. But this story happens to be something that occurred during one of these gigs that we had, and what was pretty cool was that we used to have what was called sound checks, of which I'm sure they still have them today. But back then, we would go in the middle of the day, and we had a set time where we got to set up our gear either behind or in front of the band, depending on when we played or when we were going to play. And this was, it wasn't actually during the sound check, and maybe I made that point, but I'm wrong here. You know, as I'm speaking about the story, all these flashbacks are coming about the incident, but I'm pretty sure it was right before, it was sort of a late sound check right before the gig, and I remember we were waiting to get set up, and Van Halen went on stage, and you know, Mike Anthony, David Lee Roth, Alex, and man, I just got to tell you, you talk about professionals way before their time. This was Van Halen. These guys, in my opinion, when they're on stage, they can do no wrong. They're just great. They were hot. They were the hottest band around at that time. And I'll never forget, and this is kind of the highlight of the story, where when they went out for sound check, you know, the bass players, you know, Mike Anthony's just boom, 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 just checking his equipment, and you know, listening to the bass, and Alex was bada boom bop bop bada beep bada bop bada boop bada, you know, he was going crazy with his drums, and you know, all this, you could just feel this excitement just generating. It was like a slow churning tornado, you know, just building up, and you know, David Lee Roth is saying a few things over the mic and checking the PA system, and you know, sound check, test, 1 2 1 2, and you know, a scream here, a scream there, you know, and you'd hear a couple of the riffs of some of the songs, and I just stood there in amazement, and I'm watching, and there's Ed, and at the time, I remember a Strat, and it had the humbucker in the back position, and you know, Ed with his phenomenal licks, you know, just going at it, whether it was picking, fan picking, or doing the fender tapping, just making some little fabulous licks, you know, that were just, you know, of course, extremely loud, because he would run Marshalls. Marshalls are loud, even if you use a 50-watt Marshall, it's loud. And then in the Pasadena Civic, you know, you had this natural reverb that was just whom, you know, just the sound, you'd hit a lick and boom, there it goes throughout the Pasadena Civic. And the thing that was like really unique was that there's Eddie, you know, hitting chord, you know, blah, 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 you know, doing a little lick here and there, and then he would stop. He would stop abruptly, and he would, with his guitar, he'd go to the back of his amp. Sometimes he'd take the guitar off, sometimes he'd have it on, and lo and behold, I hear this, like what sounded like the chiming of glass, you know, glass bottles in a box. And I looked over, and sure, there was a box, and you know, he's picking up this box, and you know, he just kind of lets it fall to the ground and crash. You know, you hear all this glass jumbling around, and I didn't know what it was, because I really wasn't into electronics like I am now, and this was before my time, when, you know, in studying old school vacuum tube electronics, and so you know, I'm watching him, and I'm thinking, well, what's he doing? You know, this is crazy. So he gets the box, throws it on the ground, and he's shuffling through it, you know, just making all this glass noise, you know, and then he comes up, and he's got a couple of tubes, and he goes over to the back. I remember the back of his Marshalls were open. There was no covers on them at all, and there was several of them there, 2, 3, 4 of them. But anyway, the one he was playing, which was lit up, or the two that he was playing, which was lit up, he would put it on standby, I hope and I believe, but then maybe not. He would just pull out a couple of the tubes, and the tubes that he got from the box, he would put into the amplifier, and it would warm up, of course, and he'd go to the front of the stage and, you know, hit some licks, and, you know, and he'd go crazy, and then he would stop abruptly again, and he'd run back, and he'd pull a couple more tubes out, maybe the two outside ones, or, you know, it just, you know, at the time, I didn't really understand, but, you know, he would do it again. He would take 2 tubes out, maybe even all of them, and grab more tubes and put them in. And obviously, they were the octal tubes. They were either the EL34s or the 6550s, whatever he was using at the time, and he had put them, they were power tubes is what he was changing. I never really saw him change the preamp tubes. It was more of the power tubes. And so, you know, this would go on for a little while, and until he finally incorporated that distinct characteristic distortion and tone quality that he wanted. And you know how Ed plays. It's just very aggressive, but yet the tonality of it, and the way he would encircle the whole atmosphere of what came out of that amp, you know, I mean, it just was fluent through his style of playing. And what amazes me is later on I understood that these amplifiers were modified by a guy named Jose Arredondo, and so they were very much more aggressive than a stock amplifier that was put out by Marshall, whether it be 50 watt or 100 watt. But I think what he was trying to do, aside from finding the right tone and distortion characteristic, I think, and I'm just speculating here, that that amplifier was biased, which is very important in setting up an amplifier, tube amplifier. You want to bias those output tubes, but it was probably biased within a certain parameter, and if I'm wrong, shoot me, but if not, I'm just going by what knowledge I've retained later on in the years. It was probably biased in a certain specification, and the box of tubes could have had tubes that were tested and biased a certain way, but yet they were in the parameters. Obviously, and the reason why I'm saying this, because if they were outside the parameters of the bias specifications that the amp was set for, if they were biased too high or biased too low, then you'd either get red plating and the amp would shut down, burn out transformers, and it very well could have happened. I mean, if that's the way he was doing things back then. And if it was biased too low, where the tube was starving, it's like when they say they're biased too cold. The distortion is very ratty sounding, it's a very ugly tone that you would hear. The distortion is just real crappy, not to the liking of what we know Ed's tone as being. So that's speculation on my part. So I'm just based on what I had learned later on, but and then thinking back. But if there was no biasing involved, if it was just a matter of pulling tubes out, putting any kind of tube in, well, it was just the luck of the draw. And if it sounded great, fine. Like Ed used to say, he wasn't from like a school of learning in regards to how he played guitar, and I'm sure it would stretch over towards the technical part, electronics, as far as I understand it. And I'm just speculating here, so don't send me emails thrashing me, But if you do this method by the luck of the draw, whatever sounds good, it's great, you're out there playing, but then they're red plating, and chances are you won't get along very far. You might. Some bands do, or the guitar players they're not aware of it, but their tubes are red plating, and they just get through the gig. But I'm thinking that they were tubes that would work in any of his amplifiers that were modified by Jose, because they were specifically adjusted in the bias circuit of the amplifier to accommodate a certain amount of milliamps. So anyway, that was a story, and ultimately, when he completed this sort of irradical adjusting of tone quality, he ended up with the ultimate tone. They would do the gig, and that was like something that I'm not sure everybody got to see. I just happened to be at the right place at the right time, and I'm sure if he had it his way, in reality, he probably wouldn't have wanted anybody to see what he was doing, because it's kind of a domain secret of entitlement of, well, this is how I get my tone, and no one needs to know it. Everybody has to do their own thing, and Ed was doing his. So, but I thought that was really interesting, and we all know that the professionalism, the end result of what Ed Van Halen was all about, was just fantastic. The guy was immeasurably one of the most ultimate guitar players, and will be, of all time. A trendsetter, and that's not one of the only things that I know that I got to witness, in talking with Ed about his guitars, how they were set up, and some of the information I'm not really going to indulge. I just want to keep it as it was, but this one, it's just tube changing. So, but it was kind of unique, and I thought it was kind of interesting to see that. And it was one of my experiences that I'll never forget in watching Van Halen and watching Edward Van Halen in creating his unique and characteristic distortion and tone quality that we all know and love. So I just wanted to share that with you. I hope to all you Ed Van Halen fans that it was inspiring to hear the story. It's just one story of an experience that I had, which I'm sure there are many. I'm by no means claiming any rights that I have it all going on as far as my experiences with Eddie. There, I'm just a blink of an eye of the experience that I'm sure many people have. So, I just wanted to point out also, if you're a new viewer, welcome. Thank you for watching my videos. Please subscribe. I'm on Patreon. Subscribe to my Patreon. Might take a little searching. I may not put links up all the time, but you just go onto Patreon, go onto YouTube. My name is spelled with the letter K. You'll find me. I'm also on Instagram, on Facebook, and also if you'd like to make a donation, if you'd like to be generous and share in the helping of sustaining these videos, by all means make a small donation or contribution to my PayPal account. It's my email address is what you use, Karl@karlsandoval.com, and I spell my name with the letter K. That's Karl@karlsandoval.com. And just please, if you're watching my videos on YouTube, spend some time, sit down like with a beer and just watch a lot of them. Give me some hours here, in watching these videos. I think you'll find a lot of interesting facts and stories, and there's points that I make throughout the videos. So if you're just skimming through them, you're gonna miss out. So by all means, watch my videos as long as you possibly can with interest and love. Also, by all means, subscribe to my Patreon channel. I will have more distinctive, specific demonstrations and explanations on how I do my guitar work if you're interested. With that in mind, thank you so much. God bless and have a great day.